Hello and welcome to today's music theory lesson. So we've already learned about the staff, we've already learned about high notes and low notes. Now before we learn the next lesson, which talks about time signatures in 4/4, we need to learn a few more things before the exercises that come up. The first thing is we need to identify notes and their values. So we have a quarter note, which gets 1 beat. We have a half note, which gets 2 beats. And we have a whole note, which gets 4 beats. So what those mean, especially in terms of harp language, is that when we are plucking a quarter note, we're going to pluck once, and that's 1 beat. When we see a half note written on the page, remember the half note gets 2 beats, so we're going to pluck once and count to 2. When you see a whole note written on the music, you would pluck 1 note once and count to 4. So that's our whole note, which gets 4 beats. So those notes very early on are really important to memorize when you see them. So kind of just begin to memorize these things as you move forward. The next thing we want to discuss before we get to the 4/4 time signature is the staff in relation to bar lines, measures, and the double bar line at the end. When you look at a piece of music, we've already learned that the staff is 5 lines and 4 spaces. And when you look at that staff, you see those 5 lines going continuously, but you also see vertical lines going up and down, and those vertical lines are called bar lines. And those bar lines delineate the measures. So when you look at a piece of music, imagine a staff, 5 lines, 4 spaces, going across the sheet of music with no bar lines, just that musical staff with notes written on it. It's a little bit confusing to the eyes to very quickly read something and understand something in terms of the rhythm or where we are in the music. So what we've done is we've added these bar lines to delineate these measures and say this is the first measure, this is the second measure, so on and so forth. So it's very much a big visual cue when you're looking at the sheet of music to kind of say, okay, this is where I'm at and this is where I'm going. So between those bar lines, we call that a measure. So between each bar line is called 1 measure, and in those measures you would have a certain number of beats. And we'll get into that in the next lesson, which is time signatures. We begin with the time signatures of 4/4. So going back to kind of the bar lines, we have these bar lines by themselves delineating the measures, and then at the end of a piece we would see something called a double bar line. A double bar line will indicate to us we have arrived at the end of a piece, we're finished, we're not continuing on to play something else. So that's the quarter note, half note, whole note, staff in relation to the bar lines and the measures and the double bar lines. So keep that in mind as you move forward with the next theory lesson, and we'll see you next time.